Welcome to Spaces Between, a podcast about bringing gamers closer together. Today I have a very special guest, designer Emerson Matsuuchi. He's been known for designing games like Century Spice Road and all the other Century games, Specter Ops, and the upcoming Metal Gear Solid. What's going on, Emerson?
Hey, how's it going, Roy?
Pretty
Long
good.
Time no talk.
I know, man. Emerson's probably annoyed because I just follow him around at all the conventions we're there together because I'm like, oh my goodness, Emerson's the best. But me and Emerson go back a little ways. So
I usually invite you.
I know. I'm just playing around. But man, I used to have Emerson on my old podcast a ton, and it was always fun hanging out with him and the other guys from Epic Gaming Night. It's always been a blast. So what have you been up to, man? If anybody doesn't know, what have you been working on? What's going on?
Okay, well, my most recent thing is that I've been working a lot on Metal Gear Solid, so that's been something that's been ongoing, and it is something that I'm always seeing opportunities to improve it. Mm-hmm. So, I know that some people may feel like it's taken a while because we announced it a while back. Mm-hmm. Actually, in fact, I think we announced it a year ago.
Yeah.
So we announced it a year ago, so I think people are wondering, okay, when is this thing going to actually be able to get to their hands? And hopefully sometime next year it will be in people's hands. But just want people to know that we are working on it. It's not one of those projects that goes dead, but it's one of those projects where it's a very ambitious project.
I know you were saying that game is massive. The amount of scenarios and the amount of stuff in it is just crazy.
Yeah, the amount of content in it, because we are, for all intents and purposes, we are recreating the whole story of the first game.
That's insane.
Yeah. So, and there's two reasons for that. One reason is that, for Metal Gear Solid fans, I was putting myself in the fan's shoes. What would when I open the box, what do I want to see? What do I want to experience? And I want to walk down memory lane and feel that nostalgia of going through the Shadow Moses, the original story. So I want the fans to feel like they have a piece of Metal Gear Solid that they can bring to the table. And then the other intention that I have was for new players, people who have never played Metal Gear Solid, to actually be able to experience the phenomenal story. So it's for them as well. So it's. I know I'm shooting very broadly to a broad audience, broad market, but that was definitely my intention. Is that I really want people who've never seen or experienced the original story to actually have a way to be able to get that experience. Because I know not everyone's into video games, but if you like tabletop games and you've heard so much about this iconic, industry-changing game, this is your opportunity to see what it's all about.
And you can be honest with everybody. The main reason there's been any sort of delays or people it's taken a while is because you're trying to figure out a way to make a mechanism when you open the box. It just goes when you open the box up.
That's going to have to be an app feature.
There was I actually got a chance to check this game out some at Gen Con. Other people were playing while I was sitting there, but there was a well-timed sound effect that I did on my phone while we were playing the game.
It was perfectly timed. It was great.
It's really cool. You take a lot of the aspects you may have had from other games, like the whole sneaking and trying to hide and stuff like that, but make it in this cooperative experience. I'm excited to see the entire package come together. It'll be really cool.
Yeah, me too. I'm wondering how it's all going to look in the box, because it's sometimes I wonder, did we put too much? Do we kind of overextend ourselves a little bit? In terms of the amount of content, because there is a lot of stuff in the box. Maybe not in terms of the sheer number of miniatures, but just the amount of story content is phenomenal. I think as far as I know, I don't know of another game that's going to have 200 pages of story in the box.
That'll be crazy. It'll definitely be super interesting.
Yeah.
So your fandom for Metal Gear goes way back. You had already you've been doing the research for this game for years, basically, right?
I guess for the past 20 years.
There you go.
Yeah, it's been over 20 years, yeah.
That's awesome.
So when did Metal Gear Solid 1? It came out in 98, wasn't it? 98, 99, around then.
Nice. You're the Metal Gear expert. You'll have to tell
Yeah,
me.
yeah. So, well, I remember playing it in college, so
That's
so
awesome.
that was a long time ago. Long time ago.
It'll definitely be cool to see like a cooperative style game in that sort of vein with the whole sneaking around. And didn't you say there's going to be like different levels of like completing different missions, like how well you can do different stuff? Like, do you actually kill bad guys, or were you able to sneak around and things like that, or?
Yeah, well, so not all the scenarios, but some of the stages, we call them stages.
Nice.
So some of the stages will have alternate ways that you can complete it. So if you complete it with in one particular way, you'll unlock a certain item. But if you complete it a different way, you'll unlock a different item.
Nice.
Now, the way the item acquisition works is that everything is persistent. So once you unlock a piece of equipment, it is yours for all future play sessions.
That's
So
awesome.
you can go and let's say that later on you defeat a particular boss and you're able to get the rocket launcher, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then or the stinger, basically the stinger. And you can, let's say if you decide to play with a new bunch of people and you play, let's say you fight Oslo, which is like the first boss, you can actually use the stinger that you've unlocked in that game too. So you can use these items. And it's supposed to, in a way, represent or kind of represent the way in a video game once you play it through. In Metal Gear Solid, you're able to like play it through again, but then you have increased capabilities. So when you play it through again, like some games allow you to take all the weapons that you earn and go right back to the beginning. So then you can just raffle stomp your next playthrough.
That's awesome.
So it kind of replicates or it gives you that similar experience there.
The real question is, how difficult is it to get the cardboard box that you can just hide under?
So that's interesting. So the cardboard box, right? It's not necessarily going to be handed to you, right?
Snap.
It is quite a potent item. So it is something that you'll need to find how to get to it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know you have other things coming up too. There was a game that I actually played at Gen Con as well, and that is Foundations of Rome.
Oh yes.
I'm pretty excited about that because that's actually going to be a Dice Tower Essentials game. I know this has been in the works for like a really long time.
Yeah. It's had a really long history to it. But yeah, it's finally. I think that I'm pretty much, at least from my end, I believe that I'm pretty much done with all the design work. And I know Arcane Wonders has been doing a phenomenal job with the miniatures and getting. I believe this is going to be a Kickstarter game, so they're getting everything ready for the Kickstarter. So it's I'm really happy with the way that the game is progressing, and so hopefully I believe the last date that they told me was sometime in January will be when the Kickstarter will launch.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see how that one comes together too, because it was a cool it felt like a lightweight city building game with this whole oh my goodness, don't take that lot, I need that lot, sort of thing, where it's like, man, I need to build my stuff out, and if you take that one, I'm not going to be able to build out as big, that sort of thing. So it'll be interesting to see how that game all comes together.
Yeah.
Awesome. So how do you feel I know you've been working on all sorts of different designs and pitching games to all sorts of different publishers. How do you feel the current state of board game design is? I've talked to a bunch of different designers and publishers and stuff like that, and they talk about how crowded the industry is, and I mean, you were watching a designer panel with me at Dice Tower Con as well, but it's what do you think about the current state of board game design in board games?
Okay, well, I do share the sentiment that it is quite a crowded field in terms of the new publishers. There's lots of new publishers that are coming into the arena. There's a lot. It feels like there's a lot of game designers out there too, and I think for a lot of gamers, I think there's a part of a lot of gamers that they want to have that creative outlet to create their own game, and it's something that I think is wonderful. So, in fact, my next convention after PAX Unplugged is going to be TotalCon, which is up in Mansfield, Massachusetts, and there I run some designer panels. And I just invite anyone who's got any aspirations to design a game to just, no matter what state your prototype is in or your idea, just bring it to the table and we can discuss it, we can flesh it out, we can help you develop those ideas and hopefully turn them into a game. So we do things like that. So the industry, I think, is growing. I think that the market is growing. Now, this is all the information I have is all anecdotal. So it's more just a gut feeling on my part, all speculation on my part, but that's sort of how I feel. And actually, that's all I can rely on because for the most part, I kind of live in a cave. So yes, if you look at the background, this is my cave.
The Emerson design cave.
Yes, this is the design cave. So don't mind the mess in the background over here.
And sometimes he's not even in his pajamas when he's in the cave.
So. Yes. I'm glad I'm not in my pajamas this time when you brought me on the show.
I think last time we had you on the show was just like that, like spur of the moment. Well, we had you on our very last show, but it was the one before that. We're like, Emerson, come on right now.
Yes, because I hopped on the chat, and the next thing I know, I got a Skype call. It's like, oh, okay, who is this?
Listen, if you're gonna drop news, and then we're gonna talk about it, it's like, wait, you're in the chat too? You might as well talk about it in person, you know?
Sure. that was good time. That was good time.
Oh, for sure.
But how about? I mean, you're more in tune with the industry now. What is your take on the way the industry is moving? Like the state of the industry. What is your perspective like?
I don't know. I mean, I just edit videos and stuff, but we definitely see a ton of games. Because, I mean, if anybody's out there trying to actually do reviews of every game possible, it's us here at the Dice Tower. And, I mean, we have so much stuff. And, I mean, it's impossible to even, like, we want to cover as much as possible. We want to get the information out there for the consumer because we're there to try to help the people that want to buy these games. They want to know, like, what's the game about? Like, is it a good game? Is it a game that we're not into? Like, does it fit my style? Whether we like the game or not, at least if we can get some information out there, you can make an informed decision. And it's so hard to even keep up. I mean, there's tons of amazing, great games that we're constantly playing all the time. And there's some that are just kind of like, well, that's kind of not as good. But there's so many great ones every year. It's impossible to play all of the good games, much less the great games, you know. And it's just crazy. I mean, it seems like every year there's more and more good stuff. So I think there's tons of design on the horizon that can be utilized and innovative things that can happen in game design. It's just, I mean, publishers have to take the chance or make that thing sort of happen or figure out something that's new, unique, and interesting that sets itself apart that's not too gimmicky, but it's still really fun. I don't know.
I think the bar is set really high now.
Yes, for sure.
I think within each category, within each mechanic, for instance, like worker placement or deck building and so forth, that you have a lot of like best of breed type games where everyone's going to have like their favorite like worker placement game.
Yeah, for sure.
Because there's so many of them that are out there and so many of them that are good that making a better worker placement game becomes a much more
really
difficult
hard
endeavor. Same thing with all the popular mechanics, like for instance deck building or area control, all of those things. It's going to be just so much harder because the bar is just set so high now. And I think that the publishers are going to be looking for games that break the mold, that are going to do something different. Not so much a gimmick, but unfortunately a lot of times new mechanics come off as gimmicks.
They want something that's going to be the next, not worker placement game or not the next deck building game, but the next thing that's going to be its own category, And it's kind of interesting because, like, is the first game that starts its own category even going to be the best game in that category, I mean, there are plenty of people that, like, Dominion's an amazing game, but is Dominion the quintessential deck building game? I don't know.
We can definitely get into that. We'll make this a tangential conversation about deck building, but I actually defend Dominion because I think
Dominion's great.
Dominion's great, and I think a lot of people don't realize that there's something that Dominion has that subsequent deck builders have not taken note of, but it's the one thing that keeps the balance within the game. So I saw a lot of deck builders after Dominion have something called like a snowballing problem. So basically the person who's ahead tends to maintain that lead, throughout the game is because there's no negative feedback loop, which Dominion has. So like an example would be Ascension. Ascension, there's nothing that, let's say if one person's ahead, there is no real catch-up mechanism. So a lot of these deck builders, they don't have a catch-up mechanism, but Dominion had a really, really elegant one in that when you bought, your victory point cards, they go into your deck.
They were dead cards in your deck.
Those are dead cards, exactly. So the person who had most of those tended to be the one that had the least efficient deck. Now, I know that most people don't like the way it slows down your deck, but that was actually the one mechanism that kind of balanced the game. So, and I felt like other subsequent ones, I think they were trying to address the issue of, well, I don't like feeling like my hand is getting worse as the game is playing, but they didn't come up with a right counterbalance mechanism for it.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah.
Do you think
a lot of deck builders just ignore that problem altogether?
And just say, it's a race, get there, done,
Correct, yeah.
It's like if you don't build your curve good enough. I mean, there's so many games that are like that. I mean, you get your advantage, and it's just holding on to your advantage till the finish line, right?
Right, yeah.
So you think the best games have this ability to, even if you're at a disadvantage, a way to swing yourself back, right?
You don't want to take away too much from the person in the lead if they had earned it, right? Because then that's. But what I like to do is to. There's no one answer that fits all in all occasions. But what's a good way to. Like I said, I don't want to take away too much from the lead, especially if it's something that was earned, right?
If they played well and did good in the game, it hurts if there's just a single card or something that sweeps that out from under them, It's such a delicate balance that I feel like designers would have to play. My favorite thing that helps balance those things is when people give multiple players the opportunity to help swing that back, like in an area control game, someone starts running away with it too much, then everybody else can chip away at their sides and bring them back down, as opposed to just like,
balancing.
And
so there's player balance.
Mm-hmm.
I think my favorite way of addressing that is to have the game scale by the further in the game, the more impactful your later decisions become.
Gotcha.
So, like an example would be like in the beginning of the game, you're scoring 1, 2, 3 points, right? So the person in the lead probably has 6 points versus the guy that's in last place with 1 point, right? Mm-hmm. But by the middle of the game, you're now scoring 10 to 12 points, right?
Right.
And then by the end of the game, you're scoring 20 to 30 points. So it's not so much how well you did in the beginning, right? But how you set yourself up for the end is I think, really satisfying way of allowing not a direct catch-up mechanism, but just giving the people or just giving the other players the opportunity to catch up by playing better in the later half of the game.
Making like in-game scoring or in-game points really valuable or really worth it. So you can set up that long-term strategy.
Yeah, I like the escalating point curve. So I'm much more a fan of that.
There are a lot of games that do that as well. So
yeah. I'm not too big of a fan of the games where you score most of your points at the beginning, and then the amount of points you get later on diminishes, because then it feels like most of the impact is right in the beginning of the game, and that really is the determining portion of the session.
And if you misplayed, I've seen that as well too. And I also agree. I don't there'll be stacks of different types of points, and if you get the top one, then it's the best, and then the lower you go in the stack, it's right. Yeah.
When you start to scrape the barrel, it doesn't feel as satisfying of an end.
But if you flip that over, where the top ones were worth less, and then you could save up for the later ones and be like, okay, you take that medium one, now I'm going to grab the big one, that sort of thing. Is completely opposite, which means that you could swing back in a game.
Yes. Yeah, that's correct.
It's definitely interesting things to think about.
Yeah. Yeah. How about you? How is your design coming along? Designs?
I guess people don't really know that much about my game designs, but I'm not like under any sort of contract or NDA, especially now.
Especially now.
So
you could really talk, right?
Yeah, I don't know how much do you talk about your games? That's another thing, is like, how much do you want to be out there in the open and in the public? And I mean, I'm sure you show it to publishers all day long, but
sure.
like, it's interesting in my position as like, I'm also a media content creator. So it's like, I mean, people, if you post something, everybody's going to see it, but I'm sure you don't post that stuff publicly. So what do you think about that sort of thing?
I guess I don't go out of my way to give out information on the designs that I'm working on, but I also don't, unless it's specifically requested by the publisher. Usually, I don't say. There's nothing that I try to keep secret, so I'm very open when people ask, and I'm more than happy when someone's working on a design. If I feel like I got a mechanic that I put in one of my games that's going to help, usually I'd say, hey, this worked for me in this particular situation. It might work for you. So.
Yeah, I had a game that like went, I mean, you know Emerson, but I had a game that went super far and I was super excited, and then the publisher gave it back to me. So now I feel like I'm back at square one. It's like, oh my goodness. But I do have...
You have the experience. Like, you've gone through the process of getting it almost picked up by the publisher, in effect, picked up the game and says, we're very interested in this. But it was just right at the very end where they had to make the final decision, and they said it doesn't quite fit their line or something to that effect, right?
Yeah. It's basically like, hey, this is going to cost too much to manufacture the way we want to manufacture it for the kind of game it is. Because, it's an hour-long game, so it's not that long of a game. So it's like, what kind of price point does an hour-long game demand,
Right, yes.
So...
Which is understandable. I mean, the components you had, I mean, your prototype was just, it looked better than a lot of finished games, so.
That's even what they were saying. They're like, holy crap, your prototype, man. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I know you've fussed at me about this already, but like, when I design a game, I'm like, I want it to be like an experience, and I want people to feel the game, I want people to feel the way I want the game to feel and to have the experience I want them to have. And it's really hard to create the same experience as the game you envision when it's just pieces of paper and stuff. And I guess if people are having fun with the pieces of paper, you're onto something. But it's like I'm very aesthetically driven when I play games. Like, I want the game to look cool that I'm playing. So and it makes it easier for people to play your prototype if they look at it and it looks like a real game.
Yes. It makes much harder for people like me who have their prototypes written on guest checks, napkins, and Post-it notes, trying to get people to come play test this game when there's this awesome-looking game over here on the other table. Thanks, Roy.
Well, the good thing about you is that you've already been put through the ringer. You already have several big published games, so people are like, any napkin that Emerson writes on is gold, So it's like, for people who haven't had a published design or don't have any like actual game design like credentials out there, people are like, who's this guy? What? He does like some YouTube videos? Psh, what does he know about designing a game,
Keep in mind that there's a lot of games that don't get published, or a lot of designs that don't get published, and I have a lot of prototypes that were just really bad. So it's not always green fields. So it's I'm thankful that people are willing to sit down and play test my prototype, just because I've had several titles that have sold well, so I'm happy about that. So, but I think that anyone who's play tested a lot of my stuff knows that there's a hit and miss ratio there.
I've tested several of your games.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of the ones that you've put down in front of me I've seen 100% go from on pieces of paper to an actual full game. There's some that are kind of like still in limbo, I think, but who knows?
Yeah. I mean, when you when you pursue game design as a full-time livelihood, you do need to start thinking. You need to start like creating almost like a portfolio of designs, right? So you want to have multiple designs. You want to be working on multiple things because at the end of the day, not every design that you come up with is going to make it to publication. So you do need to diversify. You do need to work on several projects at a time,
Oh, for sure.
just so that you have. Also, it's a good way to cleanse the palate, so to speak, when you're working from one project and you stall out in a particular project. Sometimes it's good to just kind of wipe the mind and go tabula rasa and work on something different. And then when you come back to it, you have a much more clear state or more refreshed state to be able to look at the project and continue on.
I feel like even with like one prototype that's helped. Like I'll work on something and then set it aside and go do other things and create some other video project or start painting miniatures and then go back later and be like, okay, I'm refreshed. Let me work on this thing some more, you know. I'm sure it's the same way with game design. It's just going from this game to that game to that game to that game.
Right, exactly. So, are you working on anything new?
I was, but it's once again like, oh man, this thing fell back in my lap. Let me work back on this thing again, you know. I'm sure you've had the same experiences with different games. Like, is there a game that you've had that was has fallen apart in like one like set, and then it's actually worked out and come into actually becoming a game with another publisher or anything like that?
Well, actually, there was a recent one where I had a game design that was with the publisher, so I thought it was going to be published in a similar situation where I had sort of like a verbal commitment that they are interested, they want to, it's in the serious consideration phase of it. And then after 2 years, it's finally reverted back to me, and they said, no, they don't feel like it's the right time for this particular game. So I have one of those. So I'm taking it back because I do feel strongly about the design. I feel like it's got potential, and it's got some mechanisms that I think are very unique, and it just needs to be tweaked and refined, and also kind of remodernized too. Because I feel like if I have a 3-year-old design, I feel like my design philosophies start to change every or there's some threshold by which I have to take a design and I have to rework it if it's been too long since the last time I worked on it. So it's in that particular state. So I am revamping it. I already do have a publisher that's very interested in it. So I will, So it's sort of in a good state at the moment. So I think it just needs a bit more work, a bit more tweaking, and a bit more refining. And also, I think it just needs to fit today's market, because I feel like the market really wants shorter, compact experiences more than ever.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to appease that particular market segment.
How much do you focus on like uniqueness in games, like trying to make a game that sets itself apart or is unique or has something different that other games don't do when you're designing? And do you try to like inject that into your game design?
Yeah, I never want to make a game that already exists or something that's very, very similar. It is very, very difficult though. So, but I do try to, for every game that I make, I do try to have something unique about it. So there's always something, at least that I always try to have something that makes the game different. It may use familiar mechanisms, but there's some element of it or some combination of elements that make it unique, as far as I know. I'm not the encyclopedia of all board games that have ever existed, so I may, so the games that I've made may have some very similar games out there. I may not know about it, but I do try my best to keep myself educated and also to try to just come up with something that's different that doesn't already exist on the market.
Yeah. What do you think is like the best way to educate yourself if you're interested in like board game design?
Dice Tower and Board Game Geek. So I heavily rely on those two. So in the beginning, it was all.
That was not like a softball or anything like that.
No, it's the absolute truth. When I started, when I first got into the world of board games, it was all the
Mhm.
Dice Tower. I was watching Dice Tower reviews all the time.
Mhm.
One was for because I wanted to know what's the next game I should buy, but on the other hand, like I wanted to know um, what kind of games were out there. And by watching the reviews, because you get an overview of it, you get an opinion of it, you get to see what works, what doesn't for a particular reviewer. So that was invaluable to get me educated on one, what was out there, and two, like what are the mechanics that people like, what are the type of engagements that people enjoy. So it really did help me kind of mold at least my philosophy on how I should design a game and what kind of games people enjoy. Like what are the core experiences that people are enjoying in a game, right? So for instance, like engine building is it's an I'll go on a complete tangent some other time about engine building, but people love the feeling of getting better, getting stronger, being a, there's player progression. I like to call it player progression.
And sitting back
So
and looking and being like, look at this thing that I built or this thing that I
yes,
made,
yes,
you know.
yeah. On turn one, you can build, you can generate one wood, right? But by the end of the game, you're generating 20 wood, 50 stone, 12 copper. You're able to churn them out. All basically, you're able to your abilities get uh, upgraded during the course of the game. And I know that there's a lot of people who like that particular feeling. So I know that that's been a popular thing. And games that do the opposite, where you start off strong and then you get weaker, those games tend to be a little bit more divisive. Some people will enjoy it, some people don't
Hmm.
quite enjoy it. So, but by watching the reviews, you get a real sense of like what are the things that people like. So, and then of course Board Game Geek because well they are the encyclopedia of all board
Oh
games
yeah, for sure.
ever existed, right? Yeah. So they're an
You can see, oh
invaluable
goodness,
resource.
what's on the hotness currently? Like, what's everybody talking about, or like,
What's everyone
what's
talking about?
rising up and down the ranks and things like
Yes.
that.
Yeah, as soon as someone mentions a game to me and says, "Hey, have you heard of this game called yada yada?" The
Hmm.
first thing I do is I look it up on Board Game Geek. They're basically like the one place to go for all information on a board game.
Yeah, yeah. And you can always be like, okay, let's see. Oh, what mechanics does this game use? Okay, cool. What's the good player counts for this game? Interesting. I don't know,
Right,
of
right, yeah,
course.
exactly.
I mean, every day at work, I'm on Board Game Geek. It's a big part of my actual job.
Yeah.
So definitely
Speaking of
lots of
board game,
awesome information.
can I ask you something?
Okay.
How do you feel about board game ratings, like ratings on board games?
You mean the actual numbers themselves, or like?
Yes. Yeah, assigning a numerical value to a game.
I mean, it's kind of hard, but I mean that's definitely an opinion based thing. I mean, I do it for any of the actual reviews that I have done, um,
Sure.
but it's like my number is not going to be the same as anyone else's, probably for various different reasons. And
Right, right.
I feel like over time, my numbers themselves change. It's kind of interesting. Have you ever like played a game and then been like, I've played that game, you know? So like you would once upon a time rate it highly, but you've played it so much that you're like now like, I don't know that I want to pull it off the shelf anymore because I have played that game, you know?
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely games that I have played a lot of, and I
Hmm.
probably don't, because I guess I have had that experience so many times.
Hmm.
I guess now I want something a little bit new.
But I would always recommend that sort of game to someone else. It's like,
Yes,
holy
yes,
smokes, I
absolutely.
played that game a ton. You'll
Yeah,
probably love it. Do I want to
yeah,
play it right now? Not necessarily. you know?
yeah. So I don't really rate games on BGG just because, I'm not the type of person that rates games or logs plays and things like that. I'm not very, I don't
I'm
do
sure
a
it's
lot of
harder too as
bookkeeping.
a designer. It's like, are other designers going to find your board game geek and be like, oh, what does Emerson think of my game?
Right, right.
It's like you're
So
judging your peers at that point.
right, right. But if I were to, what I would do is I would put the rating at when I enjoyed it the most. That's the
Gotcha.
rating that I would probably put on there.
That's definitely the
So,
nicest way to do it.
Well, yeah, but I think it's more representative because people are, well, I always think, okay, why are people looking at the rating in the first place? Most likely, my guess is that they're looking to see if it's a game that they want to purchase,
Hmm.
right? So it's going to be a fresh experience for them. So let me give them the rating of when it was a fresh experience to me. So
Yeah,
I
that
think
makes
it's more
sense.
representative of what they want to see in a particular rating.
It's so hard because like people's opinions on a game can be swayed and changed by so many things. I mean, some
Yeah,
games are very dependent on the group you play them with,
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like if you
yeah,
play
absolutely.
with the perfect group, this game is amazing. But if you play with the
Yeah,
wrong people, you're not going to have the same experience or even close.
yes. Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Because, I mean, we're not playing these games in a bubble, and it's not just the game itself. We're also playing with and sometimes playing the people that you're playing against.
Right,
Depending
right,
on the sort of
exactly.
game. It's like, oh, this whole game is about trying to manipulate this person to do this thing. It's kind
Yes,
of
yes.
interesting sometimes depending on the game.
Yeah. Now, I've had games where the game was mechanically really poorly developed, but
Hmm.
because you're with fun people, we had a lot of fun with it.
Hmm.
So, and I've played games that are, well-designed games, but you're playing with the not so fun type of people, and it
Hmm.
doesn't turn out into the best of experiences.
And sometimes those same people might be fun in a completely different situation. It's just that game
Right,
didn't work with that group.
right, right. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. And the reason I brought this up was because I was playing a game that I saw a review on,
Hmm.
and the review they gave it initially it looked like they gave it a 4.9 out of 10.
Hmm.
So it's a very prominent review site. Uh, but after I had played the game, I thought it was an absolute phenomenal game. I thought it was absolutely brilliant.
Hmm.
And then it started to now this particular game was a very interesting game in that it caters to a very specific, I don't know, maybe a specific mindset. And it's one of those games that it's hard for me to recommend to everybody because I know there are going to be some people who are not going to enjoy it.
Gotcha.
So so this particular game I feel like is the one that would be deserved by having a numerical rating because it's not the numerical rating that should really dictate whether you should buy this game or not.
Hmm.
It's it's one of those type of games. And you're probably wondering what is this game that I'm talking about, right? So I'll give you a hint. It's from the same creator of Metal Gear Solid.
Oh, huh. I don't know which game is it.
It's a video game. It just came out earlier.
Oh,
Actually,
gotcha.
it was actually last month that it came out.
What was that game called? Is that the delivery game or whatever it is? The
Yes, it's
Death
called Death
Stranding or
Strand.
something?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's Death Stranding. And what I did was I kind of logged like every so often I would log what I was experiencing. So actually no, let me bring it let me bring it up. So I was kind of logging it at like certain milestones. So I was 2 hours in, and I said I am completely clueless, but I'm intrigued. So it kept me wanting to play more. And then next time I logged it at the 5 hours, and I said I am clueless as to what's going on. Well, not completely clueless. Like they're telling me about this notion about what the Death Stranding is,
Hmm.
uh, but the whole story is not clear yet. But it was clear what I needed to do. I needed to deliver packages. I'm a FedEx guy. This is a pick up and deliver game.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think at that point, most people are going to say, "Oh, this game is not for me," right?
Right.
And in fact, I was actually kind of questioning, it's like, do I really want to continue if all I'm going to be doing is just delivering packages? But there was something really intriguing. There was actually something satisfying about it too, because I think that by calling it a pickup and deliver game or a package delivery simulator, like a FedEx simulator, it doesn't quite do it justice because there's a whole lot more that's going on
Hmm.
because it's not about delivering a Black Friday big screen TV to a yuppie neighborhood. It's not about that. It's one of the scenarios that I mentioned was okay. I'm carrying uh, fragile medical equipment, and I need to get this equipment from one location to another location because someone's life is depending on this.
Mm-hmm.
But along the way, I can either go through an area that has a terrorist camp, and as soon as they spot me, they're going to shoot at me, or do I go through this other path where there's supernatural predators that are going to be coming after me there?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I have a time limit, and also it's part of the story. I'm not spoiling anything by saying this, but the rain in the game, whenever it rains, it actually accelerates time. So your packages are starting to deteriorate, or they deteriorate rapidly when you're in the rain. So not only do you have like a time limit, you have to get this equipment, and you have to make sure it doesn't get damaged.
Can you
Because
bring an
someone's
umbrella or?
you have a suit, but everything it's in a container, but the container will degrade, right? And once the container completely degrades, then the contents of the container will start to degrade. So, and it can only withstand so much degradation before you're going to fail that mission.
Gotcha.
So, but at the same time, I'm trying to sneak by, this terrorist camp, or worse, or the most stressful part was trying to sneak past like these very otherworldly type of beings. And it was actually a super, super tense experience, like one of the most tense experience in a game. So
Gotcha.
it's, once you get to that point, then I think it's going to really hook you in. And then by the end, I said, I think this was 55 hours in. I finished the game, and I said, the only thing I said was, it's absolutely brilliant.
Nice.
The game was phenomenal, but the funny thing is that it's not going to be for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But for those people who it is for, they're going to, when I was watching I finished the game first, and I watched reviews of it, and I saw reviews just panning the game, and then on the other spectrum, I saw reviews that were saying it's an absolute masterpiece. It's, some people are saying this is going to be game of the year. Now, I don't quite think it'll be game of the year just because the game is so divisive.
Yeah.
But for those who can appreciate this style of game, there is a lot there, and it's something that for those who are going to enjoy it, they're going to enjoy it immensely.
Do you think there's something to be said about a game that like doesn't hook people in the very beginning? Is that like something that's hard for games to do sometimes, if like they're trying to tell like a long story or that sort of thing, or like build it gradually?
There's definitely a risk. There's a risk that you're going to lose your portion of your audience. And I think that even for me, like there was a point where I was questioning whether I wanted to keep going or not. But it is there for a particular reason, because in the beginning, just the traversal part of it, it's easing you into the mechanics of it,
mm-hmm.
and then two, you see how difficult it is to like trudge this package over like uneven terrain and so forth, because then it makes you appreciate all of the upgrades you get later on in the game.
Gotcha. So
there are upgrades that make it faster. You can carry more. In fact, you can even pave roads and get vehicles and things like that. Now, here's another interesting thing about the game is that I took a little bit of time and I started to build infrastructure. So I started to build roads over the sections that I was traveling more. I was using that particular route more. So I devoted resources and time to actually build roads. So, and what was interesting is that I built like the first section of road. And then I got the notifications that, so-and-so is benefiting from using that road. So I was constantly getting these notifications and likes, which is sort of like, not really a currency, but just sort of like a gauge of how you're doing in the game. And the funny thing is that I would go back to my session, and then that road would be extended, but it was extended by other players. So I get to see the structures and the roads that other players have built, and I'm able to use them as well. So there is a community. You can't see the other players, but you can definitely feel the effects that the other players have had on the game.
That's crazy. Is there just like one giant server, or are there a bunch of different servers or whatever that you play as a part of?
I'm assuming that there's multiple servers because I don't think otherwise my world will probably be full of all these structures being built.
Right.
So it's I believe it's like a handful of players that are grouped together.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But I remember distinctly that like I was at a place where I came to like an edge of a cliff. I was like, damn it! Like I needed a either a ladder or a climbing anchor or something like that, and I didn't have anything. I was looking at the map like, oh god, I'm going to need to walk all the way back around. Either that or go back the way I came to pick up more equipment and then return, or I have to take an incredibly long, arduous route. But someone was nice enough to actually leave a climbing anchor there. So I got to
Nice.
use someone else's equipment. Yeah, they left a ladder and a climbing anchor, and I was just thanking them that they actually left those things because you could pick them up and take them with you again.
Nice.
So you could just dismantle them and things like that. So the fact that they just left it, so like I would just simply anytime I construct a ladder, I leave it there for like the next person.
Hmm.
It was a really interesting. It's incredibly unique. Like I've never seen a video game do that.
Yeah, I wonder. It's interesting that these like semi like multiplayer games. It's not like there's not really other people there in your game, but there kind
Right.
of are. Like
They're
I've
not
been
there, but
playing a lot of
they're
I've been
impacting
playing a
your
lot of the
experience.
new Pokemon game, and
Mm-hmm.
it's got a
So
thing in
Sword and
there where
Shield.
you can, yeah, Sword and Shield on the
Sword and
Switch.
Shield.
Yeah, and it's got a lot of stuff in there where you can go online and it shows other players driving around, but you can't really actually interact with them. You can talk to them and they'll give you little items, but they don't actually know that you're talking to them. But you can set up
Right.
like random trades, and it's interesting because like you'll trade away something, and the game seems to do some sort of like pairing with these random trades where it tries to give you specifically new Pokemon that you haven't really gotten before. So it always feels like you're getting something like fresh and exciting like every single time you do it. And it just like I don't know, it's just like some sort of dopamine hit each time you do these
Yes.
trades. It's
Oh,
just
yeah.
like trade. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
fun to see what you're going to get next. And there's somebody out there on the other end. And I mean the game's worldwide, so you're getting like Pokemon back with German names and Pokemon back with like Japanese names and Taiwanese names, and it's just interesting to be like, where did this thing come from? Like, what does
That's
this
cool.
name even mean? You know, because I mean it
That's
keeps
cool.
the name that they named them. So it's just interesting, like these things that video games are doing, where it's like allowing other players to affect your game, but you're not like actively playing the game together. You know,
Right.
it's kind of
Right.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's they have a new term for it. It's called asynchronous multiplayer.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that I think it there's like a certain level of personal investment when you know that you're impacting someone else's experience in the game, which is interesting. So it's something that I always try to see if there's some way to incorporate some of the things that are happening, some new developments in video games, how they can be incorporated into the tabletop
Yeah.
area. And it's quite difficult. There's tabletop design space. It's quite limited in terms of what we
Mhm.
can do, but we always try to push those boundaries.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
but it'd be interesting to do something like this where let's imagine like a legacy game where the decisions you make will impact the experience of someone like another group that's playing the same game, but
It
they're
would
going to
be
have a different experience.
it would be interesting to have like a public legacy game, you know, like a game made
Exactly.
for like a game cafe or a game library. Like we have the Dice Tower library. What if there was a game that was designed for that sort of thing, where it's like in the library and Group A plays the game and changes
Right.
the game in some way, then Group B comes and plays the game, and it's slightly
Yes.
different because of the things that Group A did, and then Group
Right,
C
right,
does it
right.
and sees what Group A and B did. I mean, it
Right,
could be the
right.
same sort of thing, like a game store copy of the game. I mean, it wouldn't
Yeah.
work with a traditional legacy game because you're carrying on the same character, but it'd be interesting to
right.
see a design concept that utilizes that sort of thing.
Right. It's like a communal legacy-ish kind of a system, right? So, there might be ways to implement that. I mean, it's it's definitely going to take a lot of development to try to make that
And the
try to
problem is,
manifest
like,
those ideas.
in board games, you don't normally want to do things that diminish sales. So being like, hey, this is a game made for the public, you know, it would be easier to develop something to tack on to like a pre-existing game, you know.
Right, yeah.
It's like, oh, this is a game that a lot of people already have. Maybe add this on, and it can adapt and augment a game that somebody already has, you know.
Right. I think there's, I mean, I don't know this for sure, but it sounds like there are RPG groups that do something like this. Like I've heard stories of like one person's a dungeon master, but for multiple groups, and something that Group A did does affect Group B and C because they're all within this persistent world. So I've heard of things like that. So I think it's probably fits more in the RPG type of space with persistent world that's used across different groups.
Mm-hmm. Unless there was some way, like if it was a semi-app driven game or something like that, you could have a regular board game that could be affected by things that people are interacting with the app with, you know.
Right. Well, as soon as you insert an app or some kind of a digital bit of integration, then it opens the doors to whatever technologies
that can do, right?
Yeah, whatever video games that can do. It's much easier to leverage it once you have a digital component to it. So, yeah. So circling back to why I brought this up was the whole system of like rating a game or reviewing a game. Mm-hmm. It really made me sort of like appreciate the position of a reviewer more because they have a particularly tricky job, so to speak. That and I think it really defines like what I expect from a reviewer now. It's like now when I see a review, my expectation is that the reviewer should be trying to convey information to the viewer enough for them to be able to know whether that game is for them or not. Mm-hmm. And I've seen some reviews for Death Stranding where it gets completely panned, and some give it unanimous praise. And I think that in either extremes, it's not doing the public justice because you really want to get the game into the hands of the people who are going to really, really appreciate it and really enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And I think that just the Dice Tower does do the analogous for board games. Like a very, very good example is when Tom Vassell was reviewing Terra Mystica. I don't know if you've seen his review of Terra Mystica, but he basically said that it's a game that he thinks is very well designed. This is the type of people that are going to really enjoy it. He absolutely hated it, but it didn't change his position on where he feels that game is going to hit its audience, right? Mm-hmm. So, and he's making a recommendation that if you like this style of game, if this is the weight of the game that you like, if you like things that are overly complex with lots of moving parts, and this is a game for you, kind of a thing. And I felt like in the video game space, there were a lot of reviewers that didn't do that.
Yeah.
So it seems like that they're using their influence just to get their opinion out, not really to match the right type of player to the game.
Right. Yeah, I think it's definitely better to be trying to do the consumer or the audience a service by helping them make the most informed decision possible, as opposed to just trashing or bashing or hyping up a game based on your own personal opinion. And I mean, we definitely do that some, like we're excited about this game or this game is, that game's overrated sort of thing. But still, at the end of the day, hopefully people can see the games for what they are and make their own decision,
Right. Yeah, we need to give people enough information so that they will understand or they will have a good inclination to know whether that game is going to be for them or not. And that's why I feel like
there's so many times we get asked the question, should I buy this game? And that's such a hard thing to answer. How can you tell someone whether or not they can buy a game or should buy a game? It's like, man, it's really hard for me to know your exact taste and what you're exactly going to want and how expensive is this game to you compared to how expensive it is to other people. I mean, that gets into a whole different thing of like, well, maybe it'd be your time and money would be better served on a completely different game based off of what you have. But if you have tons of capital, throw it at whatever game you want.
Right.
It's hard to know how picky you're going to be on a game and how much you'd like it. So it's really hard to recommend a game for a specific person. But if we just show you the game and show you kind of how it works and tell you, hey, this is how I felt about the game, but hopefully you can make your own informed decision,
Right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to know everyone that's watching a review, you're not going to know what their particular tastes are, right? Mm-hmm. So, like you said, you show them as much as you can. You want to give them as much information, arm them with as much knowledge of the game as possible so that they can make their own decision. So that's why people like seeing playthroughs. I personally love watching reviews of games, and usually there are times when someone describes a game and it describes all the things that they don't like about it, and then I think to myself, you know what, those sound interesting to me, though. You may not like those particular mechanics, but I do like those mechanics. So all that information is really, really helpful. And I feel like the one area where that has a lot of influence and weight, but conveys the least amount of information is the ratings. The ratings of a game is the part that gives the least amount of information, because a game that's rated a 7 on BGG might be your absolute, a 10 out of 10 game for you, kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I mean, we don't actually, for the reviews that are on the Dice Tower, in our actual reviews, we don't normally, or at least Tom doesn't normally put like the number in there. He's like, a digit is not necessarily the most important thing. I mean, we'll put the like seal of approval or seal of excellent on it, which is based off of a number, but that number is normally behind the scenes as opposed to like out in the front, because we don't want people to focus on the number. People are gonna be like, oh, this game is only a 7. Only a 7? You know how many games are out there? 7 is good. It's like it might be an amazing game for you if it's good enough to get there. Because I mean, Tom, I would say Tom is probably, at least he has played more bad games than anyone else. I don't know if he's played... He has played a lot of games. I don't want to say he's played more games than anyone else, because there are people that play massive amounts of games. But bad games, he plays everything, and he normally gets hit by a ton of terrible games. So he knows what a lot of good games look like majority of the time, too. So.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm jealous how fast he can read a rule book and mostly understand it.
Yeah. So sorry I monopolized a big chunk of this podcast just going over like rating systems and things like that.
Listen, this podcast is about talking about whatever we want to talk about. So that's the fun thing about this one is we don't have to. We just go wherever the conversation leads, and we can get deep on certain topics or deep on certain things. That's kind of what I wanted. That's why I wanted to start Spaces Between, is so that it could be a little bit more freeform and flowing, instead of me sitting here thinking, okay, that question's next, or even getting to a certain point where I'm like, oh man, I have 10 more questions on the list. We better wrap this topic up. I want to be able to get deeper and talk about whatever subjects you want to talk about or whatever comes up,
Right. Well, what did you want to talk about, Roy?
I honestly, I just want to talk with the legendary Emerson himself, so.
You're way too generous.
And when we're gonna get you to eat some more hot wings? Come on, hot wings. You love spicy food. Not really.
Yes, I love spicy foods that are mild.
mild spicy
makes me sweat.
Oh man, we are both going to PAX Unplugged though. I'm super excited about that.
Yeah. What's your schedule like at PAX?
I'm gonna be working at the Dice Tower booth. So I'll be there on and off. I have the times I'm supposed to be working. I'm also going to be at sometimes during the day trying to show some sort of board game thing to some publishers and stuff. I don't know what I'm talking about. But I have a couple publishers lined up to show games to. And that should be interesting. So wish me luck, Internet. But it should be good.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Roy's got this amazing 4X in an hour game. And it looks amazing.
You played it.
It's got real molded, painted planets that on rotating ring. I mean, no wonder it's just too expensive to produce, because you've got all these like cool things going on in the game.
here's the thing. I listen to tons of designers like you and listen to Tom Vassell and all these people that said make your game great and make it stand apart and make it look awesome and make it quick playing and do all that. I basically did my research and this is what I came up with. And everybody knows that I love 4X and space. So not that there's not already tons of amazing 4X space games out there. There are.
There's not enough. There are, but there's not enough of them, right?
There are, but there aren't any that do it in 1 hour, and
there aren't any that do it in less than 3.
I know, that give you like an actual 4X feel, because to me, I don't know, 4X is, you can't just say, oh, you're exploring, oh, you're expanding, oh, you're exploiting, oh, you're exterminating, and actually just make it real abstract it and call it a 4X game. I mean, you needed to have that, like, Masters of Orion, like, Age of Empires, Age of Wonders feel, where it feels like you're gaining ground and building up something, as you go along. And it's kind of a hard concept to grasp and get a hold of in a short time frame, How do you do epic in an hour?
How do you do epic in an hour?
You never stop playing the game. That's the answer.
Right.
You don't wait for the other people to take their turns. You keep going.
Yes. You make it real time. And when you make it real time and you make it last for an hour, it's going to feel epic because it is going to be.
And my game's not even real time. It's
your game's not real time. Yeah. But if you wanted to feel epic and you need to squeeze it into an hour, my suggestion would be to make it real time.
Mm-hmm. It's harder to do. Without, I mean, if you could make it something like StarCraft or something like that and actually make that work in an actual board game in that way, that would be hard to pull off. But
that would be difficult to pull off, yeah.
It's like, oh man, the problem with real time is everybody has to know the game really well. You can't have complex real time because the more complex you go, the harder it is because everything has to be taught up front,
Right, yeah.
So it's like everybody has to know the game and everybody has to know how to do it correctly because we can't stop in the middle and then clarify the rules,
Right. Yeah. No, that's a tough one.
But apparently Escape is better than Twilight Imperium 4 for some reason.
Escape?
I don't think so. We did me, Mark Streed, and Brian Drake did a battle royale of board games, and we had different pairings. And Twilight Imperium 4...
Oh, I saw that. I remember that, yeah.
Twilight Imperium 4 matched with Escape.
Yeah.
And I voted for Twilight Imperium 4. They both voted for Escape, and the internet went mad. Which they have the right to do.
Hey, I was just happy that Spectrops was on the list somewhere.
Hey, I put Spectre Ops on the list, and it won at least once, I know.
Thank you.
I love that game.
I was happy about that.
I still love Spectre Ops. I still think it's fun. And I still need to play that with more people, I haven't got all of my time out of the expansion that I want to get. I need to get some more plays in,
Okay. Cool.
So many games, man.
There is. There's a lot of games. A lot of great games out there, too.
And some games have apps, but not Spectre Ops. No, I'm just kidding. I think that ship has sailed at this point.
Well, I could have worked on it, but I ended up playing more Death Stranding. Because I had to play the next game from the guy who created Metal Gear. So I had to play it. I had to know what it was about. And I got hooked on it. So,
nice.
Yeah. But anyone listening, Death Stranding is definitely a game that I think that some people are going to fall in love with.
Which systems does it play on? Is it only PlayStation or is it computer?
I think it's only PS4 for now. It'll come out on PC later, but it's only on the PS4 for now.
Gotcha. So if you have a PS4, ask Santa.
Yeah. Yes. So, what else are you looking forward to at PAX?
I know it's weird to say, but there's a lot of really good food places around Philly for PAX. Last year was so interesting. Like, I worked at the Plaid Hat booth at PAX. I knew that I was going to be working for the Dice Tower at that time. Like, I'm coming up on my anniversary of being with the Dice Tower because I moved down here at the beginning of the year. But this time last year, I knew I was going to have the job. So it was kind of like an interesting situation in my life where I'm like, I'm pitching this game to Plaid Hat. People don't even know any of this. But then also, like, I'm going to go work with Tom Vassell in the Dice Tower. I was so excited. So, and I'm still excited. It's still a blast.
Yeah.
So, who knows?
So, are you going to be hanging out with the Plaid Hat guys at all?
I'm at least going to stop by and say hi, because they're always fun to hang out with. And I don't know who all's going. It seems like a lot of these publishers, sometimes the marketing budget has to get cut back, and it's like, oh man, there's less people showing up at the show. It's really cool when you get to see giant groups of people. Did you get to go to Board Game Geek Con?
No, I didn't.
I
did not get to go to that one. Did you?
Me neither, no. But who knows?
Yeah. It's a BGG Con. I went there, I think, once or twice. Twice, I think. And it's a great con.
Yeah, that's one of the ones I'd love to hit up someday. Mostly because it's down in the Texas area, too. And my brother lives in Texas, and it'd be cool to, like, have him go to a convention. He's gone to Board Game Geek before, but I've never been there. So.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Cool.
So you're going to go to any of the overseas conventions this coming year, Emerson? Are you going to be able to make it out to like Essen or UK or anything crazy?
I hope so. I hope. I was really close to making it out to Essen, but just couldn't quite make it. My wife only has so many vacation days, and every time that I go on a convention, she's got to take time off from work. So the number of and also that would also imply that it would eat away some of the like family vacation time too. Mm-hmm. So if I go on too many conventions, that means it's kind of eating into that reserve of days off that's meant for like family vacation.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So that's why it makes difficult. So I do have to like kind of pick and choose which conventions I go to.
Yeah, I know you probably have a lot of partners over there at Essen and a lot of connections that would probably be good to hit up. It's like a whole different world, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'd definitely love to go to Essen. Yeah, I've always wanted to go to Essen.
Yeah, I think this next year I'll probably be there. I wasn't there this year, but everybody came back at the studio and were like, people were asking about you, Roy, and we needed you there to help with this and this, and so I feel like I'm going to be doing the work. It's fun. I always love, like, some of the best parts of being at these conventions are like working the booth and having a place that people can come and like say hi and visit with you. Like the Dice Tower's entire booth thing, it's like we have promos there, but it's not like we're selling anything. What we're selling is the Dice Tower itself. Like, come by and say hi. It's awesome to like have a place to interface with the people that consume our content. It's really fun.
Right.
So I'm sure you get that a lot at different booths when people run by. Everybody's huge lines of people always trying to get Emerson to sign their games. It's crazy.
Not as much as the Dice Tower folks, though. When I'm walking with Tom Vassell will get stopped like 20 times, and no one would pay attention to me.
Listen, you just gotta start wearing bright colored hats. That's what it is.
Well, no, I totally understand it, and just having people ask me to sign their games, like I always feel honored to do it. I feel bad that I'm marking up their box. I don't know. I always like to keep my boxes pristine, but yeah, I always feel bad.
I feel like a lot of times it's like they want you to sign the game because it's like that moment that I actually got to meet the designer. I know back when the very first time me and Rob met you, back when we first started Epic Gaming Night, and Rob's like nervously went up to you and was like, "Oh, Emerson, will you sign my Specter Ops?" And then later after that, you ended up being like, "Oh, I saw you guys' podcast." Like, I don't know, just like those sort of like signatures on a box remind you of like those memories of when you met someone, you know? It's, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it might not mean that much to you, and you might not think, "Oh, I'm signing this box," but just imagine that person going home and playing that game with their game group and being like, not only did I get the new hot game from Emerson, I also got him to sign the box because I met Emerson, you know? And I mean, it's kind of crazy because like even simple things like liking people's tweets that people tweet at you, or like friending somebody back on Facebook. I remember when I had first started like doing board game media, or I wasn't even in board game media yet, and I would like tweet at like Jerry Hawthorne, like, oh, check out like this picture of me and my friend playing Mice and Mystics, and he would like it or reply back. Like, it's crazy. Like back in the day, it's like, oh my goodness, that meant the world. It's like you show your friend like, oh my goodness, Jerry like tweeted it back or like reposted it or something crazy like that. And as the person on the other end who's doing it, you're just like, cool, they like my game. But you don't actually know how much something like that could affect somebody, you know?
Right.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I mean, if me signing a game can make someone's day, I'm happy to do it all day long. And for people who post up pictures of my games and things like that, it just makes me it gives you that incredibly fulfilled feeling when people are out there enjoying your game and they're tweeting about it, right? So to all those people who've done that, thank you, because obviously I can't speak for all designers, but for me, like, I get a tremendous amount of joy just by seeing other people post pictures or I do this funny thing when I go to the conventions, is that I look around and if someone's playing my game, right, and I always just kind of like try to observe from a distance to see if they're having a good time and stuff like that. I'm the strange psychotic stalker that's kind of walking around in the convention. So if
it's going to be bad if I ever get a game out, because I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, if I saw people playing my game, I would probably just run up to people's tables and just start high-fiving everybody at the table. dude, yes, you hate it? I don't care. High five.
Well, one day you're going to get that experience. So it's the first time it's like very surreal, though.
Yeah. Who knows? Yeah. I'm sure it comes with good and bad, you know. You have the people that love it and the people that don't, so it's always going to be interesting. Who knows?
Yeah. But going back to that time that we first met at, it was at Gen Con.
It was at Gen Con, yeah.
Yeah, it was at
my
Gen
first Gen Con, I'm pretty sure. So.
Yeah. Because I remember you guys came, you asked for me to sign the box of Spectrops, and I kept looking. I was like, I know these guys. Like, I felt like I've seen you, and it bugged me for like a good 20 minutes. I know these guys. I've seen them. I've seen their faces. And it took me the longest time. And when I finally had that eureka moment, I had to go up to you and says, I know you guys. I've seen you guys. And it's one of those things, too, because you were on a podcast, and you guys were talking about Specter Ops on that podcast. And because of that, like, it's one of those moments that, like, I felt really good that someone else is talking about my game and enjoying my game. And that's what, that's the part that I love most about being a designer, is that I can actually give other people a good experience.
Yeah. It's awesome, because it's like you try to create these experiences that people are going to remember and things that are going to last and that people are going to have fun with. But there's no possible way to ever know how far it reaches or what's going on, with the thing that you put out there in the world.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting.
But that mystery is also a good feeling, too.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess you can just always pretend that people are always hunting people down with a beast and jumping on them mercilessly and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Whatever, Raxon can't succeed.
Yeah.
Arc for life.
I got to work on another expansion for Spectrops now.
Yeah, good luck with that. How long the last one took.
Yeah. Well, it's... The second one does give a good amount of content because, well, mathematically, I'm just thinking in my head, because we originally had 4 hunters, 4 agents, and then the new one has 4 hunters, 4 agents. But now the combinations of it it's not additive, it's exponential, right?
Oh, for sure.
So the number of different combinations is greater. So hopefully that'll tide people over until we can figure out what we want to do for another sequel or expansion or something like that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we've hit past our 1 hour mark. So I guess
is this supposed to only be an hour?
I guess it is. I mean, I could talk to you forever, but we have to go online to talk about secrets afterwards. But hey, if anybody wants to check out any of your stuff, Emerson, or if people are more interested in learning more about the games you make or things that are coming up. Can you shout those out real quick for everybody?
Oh, so got Metal Gear Solid with IDW. I have Foundations of Rome with Arcane Wonders, which will be part of the Dice Stars Essentials lines. I will have an upcoming release with Plan B, I believe, but no date yet on that one.
Nice.
So yeah, so I think those are the ones that I can talk about at the moment.
Nice. And Century's all finished up now, or is there going to be another section added to the panorama of? No, I'm just kidding.
No, it's done. It's done for the time being, just because it's going to be a lot of work to get a fourth game in there.
And to figure out how to make the fourth game work with the other three games.
Exactly.
the design nightmare. Emerson has nightmares of that every night, I think. Awesome, man. Well, it's always a blast having you on the podcast and talking to you, and I'm super stoked to see you at PAX Unplugged. If anybody sees either me or Emerson, make sure to hit us up and say hi.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if you see me, it doesn't matter if I look busy or anything like that. You're more than people are more than welcome to just come up and just say hi.
Nice.
So don't be shy.
All right. Well, if you'd like to check out Spaces Between, the stream in the Dice Tower group on Monday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and then it is released on the Dice Tower YouTube the following Monday. Also, make sure to check it out on iTunes as well. Just search for Spaces Between, and you can see the catalog of all the different awesome people that I've had on the show. Well, thanks again, Emerson, for coming on. It's been a blast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is great.
Bye.
Just like old times. Bye.
Thanks so much for watching another Dice Tower video. If you enjoy our videos, subscribe to the channel for more fun, comprehensive board game coverage. Also, consider joining us at one of our events. Come to Dice Tower Retreat, a small, intimate gathering where gaming is king. Join us for Dice Tower Cruise, the largest board game cruise. Attend Dice Tower West in Las Vegas for gaming fun on the West Coast, or Dice Tower East in Orlando in sunny Florida. Dice Tower Conventions, the friendliest gaming conventions on Earth. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.